So we're going to talk about the health benefits of a whole food plant-based diet. And this is based upon a lot of journal articles, a lot of literature that I've looked at. That a lot of it comes from our website, from the Whole Food Plant-Based Committee. And afterwards, if any of you don't know how to get to that website, I can show you how to do that. Share my screen and show you that as well. Okay, so whole food plant-based diet is essentially eating everything that you see here. Are you seeing, you're seeing the new slide, right? What is a, hold on one second. Are you seeing the slide that says, what is a whole food plant-based diet? Whole grains, legumes, etc.?
Yeah.
You're seeing that. Okay, good, good. Okay, so basically, you know, eating everything except no processed food and no animal products. So, you know, there are people who are like junk food vegans. They can eat Oreos and drink Coca-Cola. That's certainly not animal-based food, but it's also not healthy. So we're thinking about foods that, you know, has minimal oils or no oils, and having all of the whole grains, legumes, you know, vegetables, fruits, etc., nuts and seeds. So there's different types of plant-based diets. So as I mentioned before, vegan is not really a whole food plant-based diet per se. It doesn't have to be. A whole food plant-based diet is vegan, but vegan can be a lot of junk food as well. And then vegetarians will also incorporate, they can incorporate cheese and eggs into their diet, but that's problematic. There's a lot of problems, you know, with those food products as well. It's not just, you know, meat and fish and chicken that we are concerned about in terms of the you know, the health issues that come from eating that type of food, but also the dairy and the eggs as well, which is a really hard thing to eliminate from your diet if you are an omnivore, but it can be done. You have to gradually adopt this diet. You can't do it overnight. It took me 10 years to finally get rid of you know, pizza with mozzarella cheese. Mozzarella cheese is hard to give up. Anyway, there are numerous benefits of plant-based nutrition. And I've originally got started with this from having read the China study. I told my students, I said, don't read the China study if you don't want to give up meat and cheese, because once you read it, you know, all of the studies that's cited in the book, you know, that's something that you're going to want to do. But now I'm not just like trying to turn you all into, you know, plant-based eaters, but I'm trying to give you this information because you're all, you know, doctors in training, you're all medical students, and as such, you're going to have a lot of impact upon a lot of different patients. So it's good to have this information so that you can utilize it for yourself and your own families, but also very importantly for your patients. So the benefits, prevention, treatment, and even reversal of many different chronic diseases, everything that you see here on this slide. There is a lot of research evidence as well as anecdotal evidence to show the reversal of a lot of these disease processes. So even if you have a patient that has some of these diagnoses, they still have to do the normal medical or surgical treatment that's required, but they could also adopt this plant-based diet as a means of helping to ensure, you know, their you know, the health benefits. Okay, so plant-based diet addresses key contributors to atherosclerosis. Dyslipidemia is a major contributor to arterial disease and is promoted by having a diet in saturated fat. It's something that we all know about. I mean, it's made the news headlines, you know, no red meat and processed red meats, very bad. Dairy products and meat are the leading sources of saturated fat. So that's why I don't even want to be a vegetarian. I'd rather eliminate the saturated fat that comes from eating a dairy diet that has a lot of dairy in it. Improvement of plasma lipid levels occurs through not only exclusion of of meat and dairy, but also the inclusion of soluble fiber, your oats, barley and beans, soy proteins, and almonds. In the middle of this pandemic right now, I am way overdue for going for a colonoscopy, but I feel confident, and so does my internist, that I can wait until January because I'm eating such a stellar diet that, you know, that's going to go a long way, I believe. So vegan and vegetarian diets will reduce systolic and diastolic blood pressure due to decreasing blood viscosity, increasing blood potassium, and weight loss. You get a tremendous weight loss on this diet. My older son became a vegan, not for the health benefits, but because he wanted to lose weight. You know, he's in his 30s, and he said, oh, I want to lose some weight. He went back to his high school weight. I mean, he wasn't overweight or obese, but, you know, you put on a few pounds as you get older, and you certainly do have weight loss. If you're going from a regular, you know, meat and dairy diet over to a vegan diet, you do lose a lot of weight. The EPIC Oxford study and the Adventist Healthcare 2 study show that vegans had the lowest systolic and diastolic blood pressures of all of the diet groups. And they looked at vegans, vegetarians, and meat eaters on this diet. Vegan diets will also reduce body fat and boost your insulin sensitivity. It also decreases cardiovascular disease. The vegetarian diets will improve several of the modifiable heart risk factors: abdominal obesity, blood pressure, serum lipid profile, and blood glucose. And this diet will also decrease markers of inflammation, such as your C-reactive protein. It will reduce oxidative stress, protect you from atherosclerotic plaque formation, increase blood flow, and reduce the risk of coronary events. The EPIC Oxford study compared omnivores and vegetarians to those who ate vegan diets. And those who ate the most fiber and had the least total fat and saturated fats, and they had the healthiest body weights and the healthiest cholesterol levels. The Adventist Health Study 2, which is a study of over 73,000 Seventh-day Adventists, in that study, vegetarians had 13% decreased risk for developing cardiovascular disease and a 19% decreased risk of developing ischemic heart disease. And this was just looking at vegetarian, not even vegan, compared to the meat eaters. Because individuals who are Seventh-day Adventists, many of them tend towards eating a vegetarian or a vegan diet. Vegetarians have lower risk of heart disease by consuming all of the food items that we talked about: vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, and nuts. But other important lifestyle factors that help to reduce atherosclerosis is certainly not smoking and weight reduction. And you do get weight reduction when you have this type of a lifestyle diet. The vegans also had the lowest risk of type 2 diabetes compared with both meat eaters and lacto-ovo vegetarians. Lacto-ovo means vegetarians, you know, who are eating both dairy and eggs. The Adventist study showed that meat eaters had more than twice the prevalence of diabetes as vegetarians and vegans. And the odds for developing type 2 diabetes was 77% less in vegans and 54% less in vegetarians. The Nurses' Health Study, in the Nurses' Health Study, there was a greater nut consumption, especially walnuts. That was associated with a lower risk of developing diabetes. And red and processed meats were strongly associated with diabetes risk. Now, one of my brothers, the younger of the two, eats a plant-based diet like I do. and he just sent me a recipe for making the chopped meat that you would put inside a taco that's made out of walnuts. It's like, it calls for 2 cups of walnuts. So walnuts forms the basis for the meaty texture and taste and the heartiness of this meal. So certainly you can use a lot of beans and nuts and seeds in your diet, and it's very filling, especially if you put it on top of whole grain rice and such. So this slide comes from a presentation by Dr. Michelle McMacken. Dr. McMacken did this presentation at Einstein back in last October, when we could still all get together in the same room. And she works at the Health and Hospitals Corporation. She's at Bellevue Hospital. So she did a presentation about, diabetes and, the risks of diabetes, eating a meat-based diet, because everybody thinks, oh, low-carb diet, that's the way to go if you have diabetes. But what she showed was that a legume-based diet has been shown to be beneficial in preventing all of the issues that occurs in type 2 diabetes. And this slide here is just showing you normal insulin function. So low-carb diets have not been found, are not conducive to preventing and controlling diabetes. These diets are usually laden with fats that are found in a meat-eating diet. So individuals who, are first diagnosed with diabetes, they think, oh my gosh, I can't eat all these fruits now. Oh, what am I going to eat? Oh, I guess I'll eat a lot of fish. Well, fish has cholesterol in it. It has fats in it, saturated fats. So, it's something that, may not be the best dietary choice. So this is the slide from another slide from Dr. McMacken's presentation. And it shows the mechanism for promotion of diabetes in meat eaters. Who would have thought meat is the enemy, not the banana? So with normal insulin function, glucose enters our bloodstream after a meal. And in a high-fat diet, as found in the standard American diet, glucose is blocked from entering the cells from the bloodstream due to the fats in the diet. So the lipids are going to prevent that insulin. It's going to prevent the glucose from being able to get into the tissues, and you're going to end up with more issues because of the meat-based diet. Okay, so now let's turn our attention a little bit to cancer and some studies, looking at a plant-based diet dealing with cancer. So the Adventist Health Study 2 found that vegetarian diets were associated with a lower risk of GI cancer. Greater protection is also can be found in overall cancer incidence, 35% lower risk of prostate cancer. Phytochemicals in the plant-based diet interfere with the cellular processes that are involved in the progression of cancer. And Campbell, this is in, Campbell, who wrote the China study, found that proliferation of cancer cells in rats who were injected with cancer, who were fed casein. Casein is milk protein. The same rats who were then fed plant-based protein, the cancer decreased. And it was really this particular study that made me feel like, gee, I want to eat less dairy, because dairy has cholesterol. It's not, good for cardiovascular disease, but the casein also can help to promote the development of cancer cells. So that was another reason why I stopped eating the dairy in my diet. There was a 25% decrease in colorectal cancer for those who had the highest dietary fiber, and increased colorectal cancer in those who eat processed meat. And we all know about that. That made front page news in recent years. Leaner body mass it can be had as a result of eating the plant-based diet. Vegans have been shown to have the lowest body mass index when compared to meat eaters and vegetarians. Significantly greater weight loss has been found with a vegan diet. Eliminating excess body fat, you end up reducing atherosclerotic and metabolic risks and boosting endurance. Facilitating glycogen storage on a plant-based diet. Carbs are needed for high-intensity aerobic exercise and endurance, and this can be gotten, of course, from grains, legumes, and root vegetables that are all rich in complex carbohydrates. We can also reduce oxidative stress on a vegan diet. So exercise produces free radicals, which causes oxidative stress and can result in DNA damage. And a vegan diet can help to provide the antioxidants that you need to counteract this. You also have reduced inflammation on a vegan diet. So with intense exercise bouts, that's going to elicit an inflammatory response and contributes to delayed onset muscle soreness. A plant-based diet may reduce inflammation and may decrease post-exercise inflammation and may facilitate recovery. So this is a very good diet, not just for people who want to prevent, different, disease processes, but also for athletes. It's good for, endurance athletes as well as athletes who are trying to build muscle, because you can build muscle on a plant-based diet. Now, supplements. What type of supplements does an individual have to have if they go on a plant-based diet? Vitamin B12 is the most important supplement. You cannot get it from your diet. It doesn't come from any food source if you're eating purely plant-based diet, because B12 comes from, meat and dairy. So you have to take, pop a B12 pill every day, some form of B12 supplementation. Now, calcium, you say, oh, you're not drinking your milk. But calcium, you can get that from green leafy vegetables and legumes, and you can also get that from calcium fortified beverages. So when I go to the supermarket, I like soy milk. There are many different types of plant-based milks out there. I particularly like soy milk because it's got a lot of protein, and there's a lot of studies that show that, soy actually is beneficial. And so I always look for non-dairy based products that are fortified with calcium and vitamin D. I'm over a certain age. I need to be taking my calcium and vitamin D every day. And everybody really does, So I make sure that, I get the same fortification of calcium and vitamin D in the plant-based milks as anyone would get from dairy milk. Also, iron. You can get iron from your diet. You can get it from your green vegetables and your legumes. So there's a lot of iron. And if you have a problem, you get an individual becomes anemic. There's things that you can do, like cream of wheat has 50% of the recommended daily requirement of iron. So and then you add a little blackstrap molasses to that, and you're just good to go. So now, where do you get your protein? This is the biggest question anybody will ask somebody who's gone to a vegan diet. Where do you get your protein? So the bulleted list you see here is you can get protein from any of these items. The biggest protein items on a vegan diet, of course, is going to be soy products. So tofu, tempeh. If you don't know what tempeh is, T-E-M-P-E-H. Tempeh is a product that you get from the supermarket that is soybeans that are, what do you call that? It's in a loaf. You get that in the department wherever you find the tofu in the supermarket, you'll find tempeh. And tempeh is nice. You mash that up and you saute that in with vegetables, and it's got a very hearty taste to it. That's kind of like chicken. You know, everything tastes like chicken, right? So, you know, you feel like you're getting a meaty taste from that. But if you don't like soy, if you don't want soy, certainly legumes, any kind of beans. You can open up a can of chickpeas. It's just wonderful, you know, and a lot of nuts. Well, you don't want to go too heavy on the nuts because nuts do have a lot of oils, but some nuts and beans are really good. One other thing that you could use, not everybody, you know, could be a little controversial because it's not, it is somewhat of a processed food, but seitan, S-E-I-T-A-N, seitan is the gluten part of the wheat. It's the part of the wheat that an individual who wants a gluten-free diet would not use this. But seitan, if it's done properly and done well, it tastes very meaty and is very satisfying and has a lot of protein in it as well. So Messina et al. In 2018 found no difference between eating soy protein and animal protein on gaining muscle mass and strength following a resistance exercise training program. So certainly, you know, for endurance training or strength training, you can go on a vegan diet. I mean, and it's probably not only is it not problematic, but it's actually beneficial because what I mentioned a couple of slides earlier, that this type of diet is going to decrease inflammation in general. So even if you injure yourself, you get, you know, whatever type of injury that you have, and there's inflammation that is part and parcel of that, you're going to have a recovery time that's going to be faster, you know, on a vegan diet because it does not promote inflammation. So this is a website that's very interesting. It's called nutritionfacts.org. Dr. Michael Greger, I mean, he's one of the people that's in the forefront of this, you know, whole food plant-based movement. And he talks about his daily dozen and all of these things that you should have every day. And I will tell you, I'm not getting as much exercise as I should be getting because of you know, of the way we're living right now. But I try to get most everything that you see here on this screen. Flaxseed, man, you could just pop that into anything. You can toss that into your smoothies, sprinkle it on your salads, put it in your soups and stews, and it's just, I mean, it just adds, you know, such a good power punch to your diet. So one of the questions that people always ask is, are plant-based diets safe for children? They are considered to be generally safe for children, but you have to make sure that they're getting their key nutrients and using supplements as needed. And because children are going to reap the same benefits and rewards from this diet as adults. Now, back when I was in PT school, type 2 diabetes was called adult onset diabetes. And we can't call it that anymore because children are developing it, right? So it's called type 2 diabetes. So therefore, you know, children can benefit from this diet as well. We don't have to wait until we get old and gray to start eating more healthfully so we can keep going. I'm right now quarantining with my son and daughter-in-law and my granddaughter. My granddaughter is 2 years old and she eats what I would call a vegetarian diet because she loves cheese. It's hard to keep the cheese away from her. She doesn't get too much of it. And she doesn't drink regular dairy milk. She drinks, it's called Ripple. Ripple, R-I-P-P-L-E. Ripple is this plant-based protein. It's based on pea protein. And you can find this, you know, in the dairy section at a lot of supermarkets. Fairway carries it, Whole Foods carries it, Trader Joe's does not. And my daughter-in-law likes it because it's got a lot of protein, it's got a lot of calcium and vitamin D. It has all of the same power punch that whole milk does, you know, dairy milk does, without it being dairy. So that's what my granddaughter drinks. And she eats all pretty much the same types of things I do. Her favorite thing that I make for her is a curried chickpea and vegetable dish. And I try to keep the vegetables kind of big and the chickpeas, you know, are whole because toddlers like to finger food. They like to pick up things and put it in their mouth. They don't like a big mushy type of a casserole dish, but all the foods have to be very, very distinctive. So she likes all the different flavors and spices that I put on foods, and she eats a lot of beans and lentils, as well as green vegetables and green smoothies. So, plant-based diet and COVID-19. There's no research out there. It's too soon. I mean, COVID's only been around 6 months. There's no research that says definitively, if you look at the people in New York City who died from COVID since the beginning of the pandemic, how many of them were vegans, how many of them were vegetarians, we don't have that kind of data. But this is the data that we do have. The diseases that put people at greater risk for COVID-19 are hypertension, diabetes, hyperlipidemia, and 55% of all of the individuals in New York State that died from COVID up until the time that I wrote this presentation over the summer, 55% of them had hypertension, 37% of them had type 2 diabetes, and 18% of them had high cholesterol. So, I mean, you can infer that this type of diet can be somewhat protective. I mean, it doesn't mean I'm going to run out and run all over the place not wearing a mask and do whatever I please, certainly. But this is one additional preventive measure that can be utilized to help, prevent, some serious illnesses. So, because whole food plant-based diet, as we've talked about in this presentation, it can reduce blood pressure, it can reduce cholesterol, and it can help with blood sugar control in individuals with type 2 diabetes. So, one final note here, the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine.org, that's Dr. Neil Barnard's website. This is something that you should tune into and pay attention to. That's something that's worth looking at as well. So one of the things I'd like to just share with you now is, let's just go to the Downstate website. On the Downstate website, if you click on community, community, and one of the bullets you can click on then is Committee on Plant-Based Nutrition, Plant-Based Health and Nutrition. This website, these web pages here, have a whole host of information that will be very helpful to you to learn more about, eating a plant-based diet and the science that backs it up. And there is a nice address from Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams. Brooklyn Borough President Adams is very interesting. He has a very interesting story to tell. It's somewhat similar to mine, but I don't have the ability as a public speaker to do it as fabulously as President Adams does, because a lot of politicians happen to be really good public speakers. That's how they get elected, right? So he just really knows how to speak and really inspire. So it'd be worthwhile to listen to his what he has to say. Basically, President Adams had type 2 diabetes, and he was also overweight. He doesn't look overweight here because he's on plant-based diet, but he was overweight. He was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. He was starting to lose his sight, and he was in danger of losing a lower limb. So he did the research. He went online. He's like, there's got to be a better way than going on glucophage and doing this and doing that and cutting this and that out of my diet, he had to figure out a better way. So he came upon, some of these websites that deals with eating a whole food plant-based diet. He adopted it himself, and he completely reversed his diabetes and lost a lot of weight in the process. And his mom, who was also very sickly, type 2 diabetes runs in their family. He convinced her to eat the diet as well, and she got much better also. So in terms of my own, I'm going to stop sharing now. Okay, in terms of my own backgrounds, what brought me to doing this is I have two brothers that are younger than I am, and my dad, all three of them had coronary events. They all had heart attacks. My dad had cabbage, because that was a long time ago. That's what they did. And both of my brothers have had stents. And one of my brothers, who still will not adopt this diet, has had to have revision and had numerous additional stents put in. And he's also now, he doesn't have diabetes, but he has to watch his blood sugar. So he has lots of other issues going on. So before my younger brother, the younger of the two, had the heart attack and the stent, I decided, with my dad and one of my brothers with heart attacks, now they both smoke cigarettes, but I said, I'm going to err on the side of caution. Women have, estrogen is protective against developing coronary artery disease when we're premenopausal. So I said, I'm not going to wait until I'm, postmenopausal to start eating this diet. And I'm going to start tending towards a plant-based diet. And it was after having read the China study that convinced me. Because between the China study and having the family history that I do, I said, I need to do better. So I gradually, over a 10-year period, moved to a plant-based diet. And my family made fun of me. They said, oh, Joanne's eating nuts and twigs. Look at her with her little veggie burger. But then when my other brother, he developed the coronary artery disease, and he had to have stents put in. I mean, he became convinced at that time that this is the way to go. And now I go to my family's house, and it's all vegan diet all the time. And they'll still make the meat items for family members who still eat that way. But at the time that my younger brother had his stents put in, at the same time, my daughter-in-law developed cancer, and she had to have surgery. The two of them are having surgery at the same time, and they both came to the same conclusion at the same time with their own independent research, and decided to go to the vegan diet. My daughter-in-law is also a nurse practitioner, so she's a health professional, and she was looking at it from that vantage point as well. So they became vegan because the plant-based diet is beneficial for those with coronary artery disease, as well as individuals who have different cancers. If you're a cancer survivor, to ensure that you don't want to have a recurrence. Now, I started this diet more than 10 years ago, and I don't have coronary artery disease. My blood lipid levels plummeted. They were never that bad, but my total cholesterol went from a 182 down to like a 137. And another very important benefit that I've had because of this diet, I have asthma. I've had asthma since I'm a young child, off and on over the years. People say you outgrow your asthma, but then it comes back. It's a chronic illness that can resurface. So when this COVID thing hit, oh my God, I was scared. I'm over 60 and I have asthma. I said, I gotta just go hide out somewhere. So I moved in with my son and daughter-in-law. They live in Connecticut, because I live in Manhattan, and I was too scared to walk around the city, cramped up in a building where there's a lot of people. You get on the elevator and there's other people, got to use the same laundry room. I mean, I was just really scared. But I'll tell you, I have not had to use my rescue inhaler in years. And I got rid of my what do you call it? The steroids, the inhaled steroids. Haven't taken those in over a decade. All I take is Singulair, which is prophylaxis for asthma, and I don't know if I really even need it, but it's like I really beat the asthma. And that was not my initial goal. My initial goal was to just not get a heart attack. But the asthma is like completely in remission, so much so that I can go to my younger son's house. They have 2 cats and a dog, and I can stay there all day, and I don't even have to take a rescue inhaler. And that was unheard of in previous years. So, you talk about, the plant-based diet, preventing inflammation, and the meat-based diet promoting inflammation. Well, what is asthma? It's a disease of inflammation of the lungs. First and foremost, it's inflammation. So I'm not getting that type of inflammation in the lungs that I previously had in years past. So, I mean, and I became even more strict since I went into, lockdown for COVID, because I'm really scared. I'm not eating any dairy whatsoever, because I really feel like, God forbid, if I do get COVID, that this will help attenuate the course of the disease for me, is eating this type of diet. So that's my story. And that's, the literature that I've also presented to you. I hope you all find this to be very helpful. And what time does this session end?
It can end at 1, but...
Okay, so at any rate, because I just wanted to make sure we had time for questions. I want to know if anybody has any questions. You don't have to go into the chat to do that. Just unmute your mic and ask your questions. Any question you might have.
Dr. Katz, thank you for your very informative presentation.
Sure.
And for sharing your stories. It's all very informative. Question about the whole transition to plant-based diet.
Hey, Dr. Katz.
What sort of things did you find helpful in the transition?
Okay, I think I had to find some decent recipes that were easy to put together and that I could eat on a, like a regular basis. Because, when you're a meat and dairy eater, it's very easy to grab a slice of pizza on the run. So you have to plan and plot things out a little better. So I went and got some good cookbooks. The ones I always liked was the ones by Robin Robertson. She has a whole series of cookbooks. She has one that are like quick and fast recipes, and she's got another one that's 1,000 recipes. And so I really looked for some good cookbooks. The one I'm using while I'm in quarantine so that my family doesn't go crazy, because, we're so, for the first few months, we couldn't even get takeout, is Chloe's one of Chloe's cookbooks. The By Chloe restaurants in Manhattan. So Chloe wrote a lot of cookbooks. What you have to the caution though with these cookbooks is that they all start you out by sauteing your onions in a tablespoon of oil. So you could make it more healthy by sauteing in vegetable broth or water. So that's something that's important. The other thing that I did was I experimented with a lot of foods of different nations. And what I found was eating a lot of Chinese, Indonesian, and Indian foods were just wonderful because they are so flavorful with a lot of different spices that, it just brought the cooking to a whole new level. The other thing I did was, my background is Italian, and I started to look at a lot of the things that I like to eat from my own background, and I've learned how to make a cashew-based mozzarella cheese, and when I want to bread my eggplant to make eggplant parm, I will dip it in some type of an egg substitute, and then put it in breadcrumbs, and then I'll cook it in the oven rather than frying it on the stove, and then I put it into a big casserole with sauce, the red pasta sauce, with my cashew-based mozzarella cheese. And my family loves it. You can put that over pasta, you can make that into a hero sandwich. there's so many flavorful things that you can do. Also, if you look at Forks Over Knives, you look at their website, they have lots of good eating choices of things that you can do. So you have to look for something that is easy to make, is packed with a lot of calories and protein and substance, especially, if you're used to eating a lot, so that you can get through the day and feel satisfied. So very often for lunches, what I would bring to work is I bring a big salad, but a salad's never enough. Even for me, I'm a small person, salad's never enough. So I would also bring some type of a casserole dish that's leftovers from the night before. I mean, in a pinch, I would put together a peanut butter sandwich or an almond butter sandwich on whole grain bread and put some slices of banana on that. And that's very, very satisfying. Or in Robin Robertson's book, she has good recipes for making mock tuna salad, mock chicken salad. You can make wraps and roll up things that you can take on the road with you. So those are the kind of things. So you have to do a lot of experimenting. And maybe for the first time in your lives, for a lot of you, you start cooking, you start putting something together, and it's an interesting thing, because my brother, he was never much of a cook. His wife always did the cooking. All of a sudden, now he cooks a lot more. My younger son, I told you I'm staying with my son, my older son and his wife and their little girl. But my younger son is married, and they have an infant who's about 5 months old now, and they're up in New Hampshire. And they're eating vegan now because my daughter-in-law in New Hampshire had been vegetarian for a very long time because of the health benefits. But now the baby, she's nursing the baby, and the baby was getting gassy and sick from the dairy in her diet. So when she cut out the dairy from her diet, baby feels a whole lot better. So my son up in New Hampshire is now experimenting with the Robin Robertson cookbook, and he's making all kinds of recipes and things. And I try out some new things when I go to visit them, and then they pick up on those new recipes as well. You all could get together and have some kind of a cooking club, and just each person comes up with a new recipe, and think about what you want the recipe to be for. Is this going to be for hors d'oeuvres when you got people coming over? Is this going to be for a quick and easy lunch that I can bring to campus? Right now, if you are spending any time on campus at Downstate, you know that you want to bring your own lunch and you don't want to go sit in the cafeteria. And so you got to find ways of having quick and easy lunches that you can put together and carry on the road with you. So that's the long answer to your question, Jigar. Okay, sure. Any other questions?
I had a question, actually. Thank you so much for your talk, but you talked a little bit about how going plant-based doesn't necessarily mean that people are eating healthier. You can still eat a lot of junk food,
Yes.
And I was wondering what guidance is out there for people that are transitioning to a plant-based diet, not only going plant-based, but eating the right things when going plant-based, and if there's any good resources for that.
Right, there's a lot of good resources. You could start out with our website here at Downstate, the Whole Food Plant-Based Committee, because they have a lot of probably sample foods and things that you can go for. And then certainly you can go Google Forks Over Knives and look at their website. They actually have a magazine that comes out every month that has lots and lots of good recipes. So that's another good place, or another good resource. And physicians for the Physician Committee on Responsible Medicine, the one that's done by Dr. Neil Barnard, that's another good resource as well. So I would get started with those. And then again, like I said, any vegan cookbook, but keeping in mind that certain recipes you're going to alter. Almost every recipe starts out, if it's a recipe on top of the stove, they all start out with using, a tablespoon of oil and to saute your onions. So there's better ways of doing that. And also, when you think about the mock tuna salad and the mock chicken salad, they're using vegan mayonnaise, which, is also not going to be necessarily healthy. So there's more healthful alternatives for that. And I think if you look at the what's put out by Forks Over Knives, I think, which is Dr. Esselstyn's work, Caldwell Esselstyn, his work, you will get a lot of good, tips and advice about how to not only veganize recipes, but make them healthy vegan recipes. And, because you can go to down in the Lower East Side, there is the Orchard Grocer on Orchard Street. They have everything vegan in there, but you have to be cautious because they have a lot of junk food, a lot of, snacks and things. So you got to be a little cautious and go towards things like, I'll give you an example. I just happen to have these on my desk. These Mary's Gone crackers, they're pretty decent. Let's see, what's in Mary's Gone crackers? It's got whole grain brown rice, whole grain quinoa, brown flax seeds, brown sesame seeds, filtered water, sea salt, wheat-free tamari, and that's it. And let's see, how much sodium? It's got 190 milligrams of sodium in 13 crackers. Well, that's not too bad. So, and it's got 3 grams of protein in it. So this is a nice little snack that you could put maybe some hummus on. Now, here's another snack that I love, but it's really not, this is pure junk food. This has in it, this is called organic chickpea snacks called hip peas. This is vegan white cheddar. So this in it has chickpea flour, rice flour, sunflower oil. So it's got oil in it. It's the third ingredient. Tapioca starch, pea hull fiber, brown rice flour, salt, cane sugar. Cane sugar is not healthy. Onion powder, citric acid, garlic powder, rice concentrate, lactic acid, canola oil. Again, another oil, natural flavor, and rosemary extract. So let's see. This has got 4 grams of protein. It's got, let's see. It doesn't have much in the way of nutrients in it. And it's got, let's see, I'm trying to find the sodium on here. 140 milligrams of sodium. Well, similar to the other product, but this one is really, this is pure junk food. I would have been better off, but I keep this, the reason I have this stuff here is I'm in my bedroom with my whole setup here to teach and to do my work. And sometimes I just don't want to leave the room and go downstairs because my granddaughter will, oh, Grandma, read me a story, But I really should be eating, apples and oranges and berries and cashews. One of my granddaughter's favorite snacks during the day is she likes cashews. So that's great. She likes cashews and what do you call it? Dried cranberries. Well, we try to find the dried cranberries that's sweetened with, orange juice or, some kind of fruit juice rather than being sweetened with sugar, and that's hard to find. So we don't give her too much of that. But she does like the cashews, and that's a good little snack for her, So, I mean, certainly, just get some mixed nuts. Mixed nuts are really good for a nice snack, and you can throw some raisins into that. Those are good types of snacks to have, and apples and oranges, those types of things. And then those whole grain crackers, and throw some peanut butter on that, almond butter, cashew butter, anything like that. This was my lunch today. I'm not done yet, but this is whole grain bread, Dave's Killer bread. I love it. It's the best. It's all whole grains. You can get that from Whole Foods or Fairway. And on it, I have peanut butter and some bananas. And then, sometimes, so instead of drinking plain water, I've got this thing, Spindrift. It's just no sugar in it. It's just seltzer water with a little squeeze of fruit juice. Well, you could do that yourself. You can have your plain seltzer and throw some fruit juice in it. So there's a lot of good options that you can do to be healthy and still get a satisfying meal. So, vegan is not all, eating rabbit food, so to speak. It's not all just salads. There's a lot of other good things that goes along with it. Any other questions? Thank you, Shreya, for your question. Any other questions from the audience?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
I just want to say, thank you for your talk. I found it really, really great educational. And I felt part of me is, I feel like a little mixed or unsure. I just was wondering what your take on some of the substitutes, like meat substitutes, particularly like the Impossible Burger, Beyond Burgers, these kind of derived, like plant-based, but at the same time, there's a lot of extra stuff and some genetic modification,
Right.
things like that in there. What your take on that is in relation to getting people off of a meat-based diet?
Well, it's a good way to get started. The Impossible Burger to me tastes too much like meat that I'm not so keen on it. I got it one time because when it first came out, it was in White Castle. I went to a White Castle with my husband. I hadn't been in a White Castle since I was a kid, and I said to my husband, we were driving past a White Castle. I said, oh, let's go in there. I got to try that Impossible Burger. So we ordered an Impossible Burger for me and a regular burger for him. And I sit down to eat my burger and I say, oh, I think they gave me the wrong thing. I go back up to the counter and I say, are you sure this is not meat? They say, no, it's not. That's the Impossible Burger. It tasted exactly like meat to me. I think the Impossible Burger's audience is more people who are meat eaters, who don't want to give up meat, who McDonald's, I think it's Burger King. Burger King has the Impossible Burger. They want to keep the meat eaters coming back to their establishment more often. And they know that if people want to cut back on eating red meat, that means they're going to cut back on the number of times per week that they'll go to Burger King. So if they give you a meat substitute, then the meat eaters come, you can eat something and it's not meat. So that's really what it's being geared toward, not somebody who wants to eat the whole food plant-based diet. I like the Beyond Burger, and we do stock them in our freezer here, and we eat them once in a blue moon when we're just sick of everything else. We say, oh, let's have a Beyond Burger. And it's just really tasty. And you can pile it up with lots of good things, some sauteed onions and some avocado and slices of tomato. So you can make it really, really, more healthful. And sometimes you just got to have that good old-fashioned burger. But a good option is to make your own burgers. And certainly you can make a lot of them and then put them in the freezer. And make no mistake, it's not going to taste like meat. It's not a meat substitute. It's more like a bun substitute, putting something between that hamburger bun that is satisfying. So I like to make black bean burgers. So I'm making it from scratch. Also, in the By Chloe book, I've learned how to make meatballs and burgers out of beets, whole, raw beets that you shred them up, or you take the beets and you roast them in the oven first. And my family hates beets. If I roasted a beet and sliced it up and served it to them, they'd say, oh, this tastes awful. But when you mash that up and you put it in with all these other tasty ingredients and you make a meatball out of it or a burger out of it, and then you grill it or something, then you've got a tasty substitute. And the Chloe cookbook, she makes these burgers out of the beets, and then she puts this green sauce on top of it that's like a pesto type of a sauce that you eat it and your taste buds just go crazy. Wow, this tastes so good, So that's what you have to go focusing towards, is having a good balance between once in a while having, a Dr. Prager's burger or a Beyond Burger from the supermarket, and then other times when you have a little extra time on your hands in between semesters, you make up a bunch of burgers from scratch with black beans or whatever, from a recipe. You make those into patties. You put them then between like wax paper, and store them in the freezer for the times when you say, I don't have time to make burgers, but I'll just take one out of the freezer and just cook it up. You know, so that's my take on burgers and other, you know, but a lot of that food, a lot of those meat substitutes, they're very good for people who are dabbling for the first time in getting away from the real thing. You know, so I think it's useful in that regard. But again, eventually you want to get away from that too, because those are very highly processed foods, and we want to stay to something that's more natural, you know, as possible, that's not laden with sodium. You know, my son, he loves a lot of the products from Trader Joe's, from the freezer section, that's, you know, doesn't have any meat and so forth. But if you look at the labels, they are loaded with sodium. Oh my God, there's so much sodium. So I like to cook up my food from scratch and cook a lot of it on a Sunday afternoon, so that I'll have it for the week, is usually what I try to do.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
Yeah, okay, so I appreciated how you discussed the whole like B12 and all the other things that you might be missing out on in terms of nutrients. Sometimes the term anti-nutrients gets thrown around, and I was wondering, you know, some people say like, oh, it's not really a concern unless like you're on like a primarily like legume or oat, like whole grain diet. How much of a concern have you found that to be in reality?
You mean not taking supplements versus taking them?
No, like the anti-nutrient properties of like legumes and certain whole grains, in like impairing your digestion of other nutrients. I was just wondering what you
lectins?
Yeah, like late.
Oh, you mean the
lectins.
lectins?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't get too much into that. There's some people that will tell you certain foods you shouldn't have. You know, the nightshades, the lectins, and, you know, my philosophy is there's a lot of literature out there. You just got to go to quality journal articles to get your information. And then at the end of the day, you got to make your own decision about what to eat. And my dad had a good philosophy. He said everything in moderation. So, I mean, I love eggplant, but I shouldn't eat eggplant 7 days a week, you know? So everything in moderation. But going with the science, reading from respected journals, you know, getting some good science. I mean, right now we're in a lot of confusion with the CDC, and they tell us one thing and the next day they take it back and then they tell us to us again. So there's a lot of confusion about, you know, how to combat COVID. The same way there's a lot of confusion about what's the healthiest thing to eat and what should we have in our diet and what types of things should we eliminate from our diets. So my answer to that is you just got to go with the science. You've got to read the latest literature, the latest findings. My presentation today was based on, you know, peer-reviewed literature. And that's the kind of thing that you have to go with. And you have to do your own investigations yourself. This lecture is a jumping off point for all of you to do your own further investigations when you have time. I mean, because let's face it, there's not enough nutrition education in medical education or in any health professions education. My accrediting body for physical therapy requires that we have nutrition education for our students. We're not turning them into nutritionists or dietitians. They're not MDs, but when you're teaching somebody to do exercise, or when somebody's coming back from having had a stroke or a total hip replacement, you know, we need to give them some words of wisdom, not only about exercise, but about what they're eating as well. And certainly, you know, the first health professional any patient's going to turn to if there are diet issues is going to be their physician. So it's really incumbent upon all of you, no matter what branch of medicine that you end up practicing in, is to have some good knowledge about and current knowledge about nutrition and what to eat. An awful lot of information that's out there, you have to understand about eating meat and eating dairy is because it's big business for the agricultural industry to lobby Congress and push this type of diet upon the American public. Big Pharma loves this kind of diet too, because nobody makes money when you eat an apple and eat legumes, but a lot of money can be had if I have to be on statins, and I have to go in for expensive procedures. So some of what's out there is because it's driven by the pocketbook. So you have to get beyond that and try to just look at peer-reviewed literature where from good journals where the authors have let everybody know what if they have any vested interest in what it is that it is that they're doing. Like if they're if they're doing a study on vegan versus vegetarian, and they're being sponsored by the National Dairy Association. I mean, you know that the study is going to come out a little differently potentially. So you all have to be the best judge of what to do by taking the information at hand. Some of the resources I've given you, and going to some of the good journals. That's the bottom line, I think. So that I don't want to be like trying to teach you to drink the Kool-Aid, so to speak. Just like this is not a cult. This is more like just doing a very knowledgeable investigation of what's out there, and then making a decision for yourself about what you want to eat, what you'd like to recommend to your family that they might want to consider eating, and when you have patients, giving them some good advice, good sound advice that's based on peer-reviewed literature. Everything nowadays in medicine and in the health professions is all evidence-based practice. And that's really evidence-based medicine, evidence-based practice. That's where we have to go. Okay.